The other day, we looked into Take This, a mental health charity that has received funding from the Department of Homeland Security to look into extremism in online games. They had some very interesting documents. They referenced Gamergate a lot and recommended, through quotes from people who worked in the game industry, that a major problem in online games and online forums related to games is that gamers have privacy. We now have the ADL tweeting out, "As digital social spaces, online games should be regulated to address hate and extremism. It's vital for Congress to examine extremist radicalization in these spaces, and we are grateful to Rep. Lori Trahan for leading this effort. An important piece to read." Let's see what's going on over at The Hill. Regulate toxic online video games the same as social media. By Mariana Olezola Rosenblatt, opinion contributor. Nice op-ed. After years of paralysis, the US and European Union have been moving to regulate social platforms. Great. Love it. The EU is taking tentative steps to enforce the new Digital Services Act, which came into effect for all online platforms on February 17th. Digital Services Act. Ensuring a safe and accountable online environment. The DSA regulates online intermediaries and platforms such as marketplaces, social networks, content sharing platforms, app stores, and online travel and accommodation platforms. Its main goal is to prevent illegal and harmful activities online and the spread of disinformation. I sure trust the government. I love the government. Please don't kill me. I love the government. Some states in the US are trying to control how platforms do content moderation, and the Supreme Court is now considering the constitutionality of this regulatory foray. Meanwhile, the US Senate is edging... Those damn gooners in the Senate, they're edging closer to approving legislation that would compel online platforms to introduce additional child safety measures. We're gonna get a TikTok message up in this. TikTok mention up in this. But these efforts to rein in social media overlook the gargantuan online gaming industry. Video games comprise the largest entertainment industry by far, grossing almost $200 billion in revenue in 2022, more than the music and film industries combined. Today, online gaming sites offer far more than entertainment. They are social platforms that channel user communication and enable networking and community building. Online games should be part of the regulatory discussion concerning digital platforms, but they seldom are. And that is based and good. Discussions of harms in gaming historically have focused on fears about the content of the games themselves. Yes, and it still does. If you're going to look, I wonder if they'll cite Take This at any point. They say a lot of very similar things to the Take This research. However, the social environment of games is what actually poses significant threats to players' safety and well-being. Exposure to hate speech is routine, while doxing, exposing someone's private identifying information. Private, doesn't have to be private. And physical threats are also common. Of acute concern is mounting evidence that extremists and other bad actors take advantage of the pre-existing toxic gamer culture to disseminate their hateful ideologies and unleash hate-based harassment. You are not just a misogynist. You are not just creating a culture that's dangerous to women. Gamers are a threat to national security. They're going for it. They're fucking going for it. I told you. To disseminate their hateful ideologies and unleash hate-based harassment. As opposed to, I guess loving obsession-based harassment is a thing. I'll give that to them. Friendship-based harassment, though, I don't know. While players, game makers, and members of civil society are familiar with these problems, many companies and policymakers are only just beginning to address, or in some cases, even acknowledge these issues. Gaming companies and policymakers seem to be operating under a misconception about how the rights to privacy and freedom of speech should apply online. The misconception stems from inadequate attention to the human rights on the other side of the equation, that of victims of extremist harassment and violence. There is no violence happening to people inside of video games. There is literally none. There is literally zero violence happening to people in video games and on video gaming platforms. Zero. None. Hate, harassment. All these platforms, they give you fucking tools to block people. You can by default not give people access to talk to you and give them access one by one. The tools to protect yourself are there and they are adequate. That is the balance. It's already solved. You have the tools to get away from it. It is solved. You can defend people's right to communicate while also allowing people to opt out. It's perfect. It's fine. Nothing more needs to be done. Fuck you. Hate, harassment, and the perpetuation of extremist ideologies rooted in hostility towards specific groups stand in direct contradiction to the very notion of human rights. Hate, that's a feeling. Hate is a feeling. I don't think feeling something stands in direct contradiction to the notion of human rights. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Which are premised on the belief that all human beings have equal worth. No. It depends on your conception of human rights. No, people don't agree on the origin of rights, actually, regardless of their specific characteristics or group membership. In practice, exposure to extremist rhetoric and behavior in games has tangibly and sometimes devastatingly affected victims of harassment, intimidation, and, occasionally, violence. Not within the game itself, the violence isn't. What are you saying? In the most severe cases, extremist radicalization through gaming inspires actions that violate individuals' right to life. If a fucking crazy person plays a game, I think it's more about the person being a fucking psycho. The perpetrator of the 2019 Christchurch massacre in New Zealand used gaming chat rooms to engage in and seek support for his racially motivated extremist ideation. His, quote, gamification of the actual attack inspired subsequent mass shootings. And a big list. What is his gamification? The gamification of violent extremism. I'm scanning this quickly. Posted a 74-page manifesto. He live streamed on Facebook. Posted a thread about 10 to 20 minutes before on 8chan. These outputs were littered with culturally relevant symbols, including those related to video gaming. Okay, that's not gamification, though. Gamification means something very different. What is this? Types of video game strategies related to extremist activity. Our understanding of the gamification of violent extremism remains particularly scant. Let me uncrop a bit more, because we're going to look at this for a second. What do you mean by gamification? Originally developed for addressing various business challenges, at its core, gamification refers to, quote, the use of game design elements in non-game contexts. It's about facilitating behavioral change and harnessing the motivational potential of video games. And the government's very, 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 very interested in learning how that can affect behavior. Curious. Where there is the, quote, implementation of elements familiar from games to create similar experiences as games commonly do. If all you're going to say is that he includes memes and symbols from games, that is not gamification. Saying that, academic literature, news articles, and investigative journalism, amongst others, have at least, mostly anecdotally, started to describe instances of extremist and violent extremist networks adopting aspects that resemble some degree of the concept. Speaking broadly, within the context of violent extremism, gamification can be thought of as either top-down or bottom-up. Top-down gamification primarily refers to the strategic use of gamification by extremist networks and organizations in order to recruit, disseminate propaganda, or encourage engagement and commitment, for example. An example of this includes Islamic State's Huruf app, which sought to gamify the teaching of Arabic to young children with the use of and references to nasheed music, guns, bullets, rockets, cannons, and tanks, arguably in a bid to reinforce commitment to Islamic State ideology's aims and objectives. Sure, that would be gamification of extremism. This is specifically an Islamic State app, though. However, this research focused on bottom-up gamification, an approach that, contrastingly to top-down gamification, emerges organically in online communities or small groups of individuals. In terms of bottom-up gamification, as mentioned, one of the more commonly spoken about examples is the Christchurch attack, where it is widely accepted that the assailant, purposefully or otherwise, included a number of gamified elements within his assault. Like what? The findings summarized below are based on relevant data collected in relation to the attack itself, includes an analysis of the manifesto, livestream video, and original post on 8chan, along with, importantly, his 749 replies posted by other 8chan users before the thread was taken down. Here, the attacker is considered to be the designer and... What the fuck is this schizo shit? Here, the attacker is considered to be the designer and player of the game. Sorry, the Christchurch massacre was a video game. Okay, of the game, and the other 8chan users are thought of as spectators and observers. Right, the livestream video and gamification. What is the gamification? Reports have claimed that the attacker had a range of weapons with him, which included 4 crude incendiary devices, ballistic armor, vest, military-style camouflage, and so forth. The assailant also live-streamed his attack on Facebook using a GoPro camera connected to his phone, which was mounted into his helmet. Many elements of the attack had features relating to video games, and in many respects, at times, felt like a video game. This is fucking crazy. The live streaming of the attack, for example, had distinct parallels with popular Let's Play videos where audiences watch people play video games live. It also had parallels with any fucking video of anything in real life fucking ever. This is insane. That's not gamification. That doesn't turn it into a game. That doesn't engage the same mental action that can grind an idea into you that repetition in a game like the Islamic State app can do, or a language learning app can do by gamifying learning something. It's a video. He gamified it by having it a video, like on Twitch. That means, hey guys, what you're watching right now is like a mass shooting, because that was filmed live, streamed live, like this. Mounting a GoPro camera to his helmet also gave the attack the feel of a first-player shooter. First-player shooter. A popular gaming style where the player experiences the game from the view of the character. Do you want to know in what other circumstance you experience the life, like the world, through the eyes of someone? Do you want to know what other situation you experience that? Existing as a human being! I see through my eyes! It's called POV filming. Holy shit! A popular gaming style where the player experiences the game from the view of the character, as seen in numerous popular and widely recognizable game franchises like Call of Duty, Halo, or Doom. The use of multiple weapons was also reminiscent of video games. He made his attack like a video game by having multiple weapons. That's insane. This is crazy. These people are out of their minds. This is a psyop. This isn't serious. These people aren't genuine. I'm sorry. I'm full tinfoil. This isn't real or serious. This is an op. 100% this is crazy. After his attack ended at the first place of worship, the assailant got back into his car and made his way to the Linwood Islamic Center. Although his livestream fortunately cut out before he got to the second location, the footage captured during part of his drive has distinct parallels with gamification and video games more widely, particularly the popular Grand Theft Auto franchise. He filmed from a car. That means it was like the game Grand Theft Auto. That means terrorism is gamified. This included his actual driving, where he reached speeds of 130 kilometers in a 50 kilometer per hour zone, driving erratically. In addition, as with most GTA games, the assailant used his weapon, in this case a second shotgun, to fire out of his car at pedestrians near the first mosque. People have done that in real life. Games represent things that happen in real life, and those things that happen in real life keep happening. He hasn't subconsciously behaved like a video game. The video game was designed to show things that happen in real life. Insane. I can't believe this is real, dude. We're so fucked. I hate games journalists so fucking much. Like, you have no idea. At this point, I don't just hate them, I genuinely believe they are enemies of humanity. This is really bad. This is really, really, really bad. Sorry, no, this is a researcher. To be clear, I'm not talking about this person as a games journalist. I'm lamenting games journalists because they should be the people who can defend us against this. They should be perfectly placed to defend us against this. Instead, they're gonna go along with it because milady is scared. Me blue-haired lady is scared. We need to own the chuds. We need to own the gamers. Let the feds fuck us up the ass eternally. Save milady. This is research. This is the global network on extremism and technology, brother. Okay, prior to the attack at 1:28 p.m. local time, the assailant posted the anonymous message below onto the now banned image board, 8chan. Subsequently, this started a thread with other 8chaners, as users of the site were called, commenting below the original post, often interacting and communicating with one another. This holds similarities with wider collaborative/online gaming scenarios such as Twitch. It's similarities to literally every forum or place of discussion ever in the history of mankind. People got together and spoke, like in video games, like in any gathering of people online or offline ever in the history of mankind, where people can live stream themselves playing games, where their audience can interact with them or each other in real time. The thread also contained a number of gaming culture overlaps, which contributed to the gamification of the attack. The attack was never gamified. It did not have game-like elements, and viewing it had no real parallel with the experience of playing a game. The interactivity is the major part of gamifying something. That's how you get yourself locked in. That's how you get the dopamine going. That's how Duolingo works. That's how the ISIS app works. One of these prominent gaming features used 36 times within the thread. Gamification also, to be effective, requires repeat engagement. Repeat engagement to grind it into you. One of these prominent gaming features used 36 times within the thread was the phrase press F. Gamification is when you press F. To be fair, that's the closest we have to gamification because it's like putting an input into Call of Duty. However, this is not what gamification fucking means. Gamification doesn't refer to having elements of a particular video game or reference to a video game. Press F to pay respects first emerged in 2014 with the FPS game Call of Duty Advanced Warfare and was an interactive element where players of the game had to touch a casket at a funeral. To pay respect is featured in the opening scenes of one of the missions. The 8chan thread was also littered with additional gaming narratives from pictures to quotes to obscure cultural references. The attack was further gamified within the 8chan thread, demonstrated in the form of prestige attributed to achieving high scores. That's a thing. The mass shooter high score thing. You can say that's a gamification of it, but I don't think that really draws people in, and it's more like fucked up dark humor. Those commenting on the original 8chan, I'd say, for something like that, I'd say press giving attention to shooters is more relevant. The high score thing is almost a parody of press giving shooters attention. Those commenting on the original 8chan post were visibly keeping count of the number of kills and were even challenged by one spectator to guess the body count, which other posters responded to with, I'm going to go 31. I count at least 22 plus the first one on the way in. Yeah. Originally posted on 4chan a number of years ago and subsequently updated of mass shooters and asked, where will he fit in? The chart includes pictures of the shooters resembling a top trumps style approach where it rated them based on how many adults and children they killed. This is dark humor? It's real fucked up. Normal people don't engage with this and go, I want to get the next high score. This is not a system of reinforcement. No, I'm sorry. Provided extra points if the shooter committed suicide after the attack, and further bonus points for having various psychological issues including autism and schizophrenia. A framework for future attacks? What remains unclear is whether the Christchurch assailant intentionally gamified his attack as a strategy to, amongst other reasons, inspire future attacks. You think he did POV camera to make it seem like an FPS? Do you think perhaps he wanted to film it and stream it, and when you're handling a gun and killing people, and potentially going to get attacked back, mounting the camera to yourself is just the natural move? Do you think it's more likely that he wanted it to look like an FPS? Or that just logistically, that's how it works best? Inspire future attack, or whether it was more of an organic endeavor due to his fascination with video gaming. What is clear within the data, however, is that there are several gamification parallels within various far-right violent extremist attacks across history. It is thought the Christchurch assailant was to some extent inspired by Anders Breivik's attack. What if I told you the attack itself is enough of an inspiration to people who share the ideology, and that trying to tie it to gaming is piss weak? Moving forward, only a relatively short time after the Christchurch attack, subsequent incidents have demonstrated distinct gamification-related similarities, including, for example, FPS-style live streams and gaming cultural references. Gaming's ubiquitous, dog. Many of the perpetrators, predominantly within their own manifestos, even mention the Christchurch assailant as a source of inspiration. I don't think it's because he reminded them of Call of Duty. I don't think it's because, damn, Call of Duty, I support mass shootings now. I think it's probably more to do with ideological persuasion that they already followed. However, much of the evidence appears to be anecdotal in nature. Yes, as expected for a new and emergent topic of study. Further empirical investigation is needed to determine the potential or lack of gamification as a tool to radicalize. Blah, blah, blah. Hold up. This is the question. This is the one, boys. Here we go. Is gamification alone enough to inspire acts of violence? Or must other aspects that have traditionally been considered within examples of radicalization and or violent extremism be present? They want to look into if something being a game with no ideological elements whatsoever, can that make people kill? I feel like it would be really convenient to the government if the answer was yes. And then you can paint pretty much any system as being terroristic. That's very powerful. What is evident within existing literature is that there are differing ideas about the role and value gamification can play within the context of violent extremism. Alright, others criticize it and say there's an overestimation of its effects, blah, blah, blah. In reality, although gamification alone more than likely will not be enough to motivate people to engage in violent extremism, it can play some possibly quite important roles, including publicizing the attack to a wider audience. The streaming of it. Literally just that it's something extreme and violent and was filmed. It didn't get more views because it was like Call of Duty. It got attention because it was an act of extreme violence on film, appealing to a wider and potentially younger audience. No kids are going, hey, do you want to see this mass shooting? It's like Call of Duty. Enabling people to blur boundaries between the real and virtual world or having a cumulative continuum of collective extreme right violence. What is clear is that the study of gamification within the context of violent extremism is very much in its infancy. I would say, yeah. Due to the growing popularity of gaming, it can be reasonably argued that gamification and associated concepts can play an increasingly prominent part in future attacks. It's nothing like Call of Duty Siffy. The Christchurch shooter was slide cancelling all over the place. It was crazy. It was insane. So, when this The Hill opinion piece refers to the gamification of the Christchurch massacre, that is what they're talking about. Here's a good quote. In 2022, the gunman who killed 10 and injured 3 at a Tops-friendly market in Buffalo noted that he, quote, probably wouldn't be as nationalistic if it weren't for Blood and Iron on Roblox, a popular online game. Is that a line to take seriously? Sorry, is this tech against terrorism? Ah, right. The information and assertion that the Buffalo shooter probably wouldn't be as nationalistic if it weren't for Blood and Iron on Roblox, on the basis of him having said that. That comes from Tech Against Terrorism, right? Tech Against Terrorism looked into the Buffalo shooter and found out he played Roblox. He said he wouldn't be as nationalistic without Roblox, right? The United States Government Accountability Office put out a document for transparency about countering violent extremism, where they noted something. The FBI participates in the Global Internet Forum to Counter Terrorism, as well as Tech Against Terrorism, which is an initiative the United Nations launched in 2016 to work with the global technology industry to combat terrorist use of the internet. So the FBI has been briefed that Roblox contributes to nationalistic terrorism. Sorry, bad crop. Bad crop, my bad. Isn't that cool? Isn't that neat? The government's not coming for your video games. No one's suggesting that gamers are terrorists. They're just researching whether or not the structure of a game itself can make you into a mass shooter. Alright. I just wanted to be a drama streamer. I just wanted to laugh at people saying they got raped, and this is happening. I never should have come back to YouTube, dog. I never should have started streaming harder and uploading more videos, dude. This wouldn't have happened if I didn't, I'm telling you. In the last few years, we, along with other researchers, have spoken publicly about changes we would like to see in industry and policy as it relates to games and extremism, including calls to empower the industry towards self-regulation, open invitations to work together with companies, and frameworks for how to leverage the positive effects of video games to prevent radicalization. Yes, research how games can mindfuck people, and then use the mindfucking for good. We want to learn how to develop mindfucking propaganda games for good, to have a good impact on the population. Isn't that great? However, action on these recommendations has been stymied by the assumption of privacy that is given to players in public game lobbies and servers. In our view, this amounts to a distortion of the right to privacy and human rights generally, which should serve to protect not the perpetrators, but rather the victims of doxing, stalking, threats to life, and other abuse online. Typically, doxing is protected by the First Amendment. That's a good meme. But also, most abuse online, most abuse in games, the tools you have to make it disappear, to filter out words, AI tools, I hate AI used this way, but it exists now, it's too late. To filter out any shit you don't want to see, it's so powerful now. You've got it. You don't want to see shit, you don't have to see shit. If it's a credible threat, have the police deal with it. It's much better if someone's going to come and kill you, if someone wants to kill me, I'd rather be warned first. Personally, I'd rather know. Rather than just open my front door and get knifed. You thought I said AI art is the future? Oh, it is. AI isn't just one thing. I mean, the more advanced AIs will kind of be, but it's not that I have a fundamental issue with AI, it's how it's applied. Regulators should consider online games fair game for regulation. Indeed, it is unclear why games are typically excluded from the same regulatory approaches that apply to social media, since online multiplayer games are social platforms. Online games normally fall within the scope of the Digital Services Act, and the regulations enforcers should ensure that game companies comply with its extensive requirements. Dog, fucking the Riot AI scanning your voice comms. Scanning your voice comms for disinformation. By the way, why are we looking at this article? The ADL shared it, including publishing human rights risk assessments, removing illegal content, countering disinformation and extremism. In your League of Legends game. Dog, there are going to be AI filters so that if you say something the government considers incorrect, it morphs your voice so that everyone else in the call hears you saying the thing the government says is true. And it's going to sound like you said it. I'm calling it now. And you won't know that they heard that instead of what you said. That's the real stuff. Issuing transparency reports and providing data to vetted independent researchers. They want their hands on all your stuff. Privacy is a problem. Games are too private. This law provides a significant regulatory push for game companies to put in place responsible business policies and practices. Similarly, when considering online platform regulation and enforcement, U.S. policymakers, including legislators and federal agencies such as the Federal Trade Commission, should explicitly include game companies within their scope. When talking about the safety of the internet, especially the safety of children on the internet, there is no more important place to start than digital playgrounds. Yeah, no games. No games for kids. Get the kids out of there. Fuck off. Get your kid out of my game. Get your kid out of my fucking game. Fuck off. Game makers, policymakers, researchers, and advocates all share the common goal of making play as safe and enjoyable as possible. Every game you want to play online has to be perfectly safe for 8-year-olds to play. It is time to open these conversations and stop ignoring the $200 billion elephant in the room when it comes to regulating social spaces online. Mariana Olaizola Rosenblatt is a policy advisor on technology and law at the Center for Business and Human Rights at New York University's Stern School of Business, and an evil bitch.